wọ́n tún gbọ́rọ̀ àgbà dé o.
ẹ jẹ́ tí ẹ gbọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ àgbà bí ó ṣe lówùrọ̀ ó pẹ́ títí àṣẹ lọ́jọ́ alẹ́.
Before we throw the floor open, I think I should just go over some of the few points that Baba made in his presentation. It was on zero tolerance for unemployment and the Yoruba nation. Zero tolerance as a policy instrument to herald a polity that nobody lacks what to live on. Not even to live on, we want to thrive, so maybe to even thrive on. Also, he focused on agriculture as an enabler, the need to tackle the issue of disguised employment. You know, disguised employment, he gave an example of someone who is hawking ballpen biros at the motor park. That person is not actually employed, he's just pretending to be employed, hoping for something better to do. Also, it presents an opportunity for people in traditional areas and create avenues to create wealth. So this is, policy instrument is something that we can use to even lift the people who live in the rural environments. He also said cues should be taken from the GSM revolution and Britain's Industrial Revolution. These were guided by stringent policies. It didn't just happen accidentally. These were eras that were facilitated by policies. Local governments have a role to play, you know, in actually executing this policy. So the imperatives of local government was also dwelt on. And also, he took us back in time to make us understand that this was a policy of traditional African societies where everyone was responsible for production, exchange, and consumption. It seems our past is always, you know, better than the present, and you know, so we need to take care of the future. So basically, those are some of the areas which Papa dwells on. So, questions, comments?
I want to express a profound appreciation for this thoughtful presentation by Professor Oyemakinde. We thank you very much. I see it as a policy instrument, which is a prescription for all of us. Question of unemployment is what I consider as a Yoruba national emergency. I have one question for you. I want to give a brief anecdote, but also I want to introduce to the audience here somebody whom I invited to be present here today, in the person of Professor Bankole Oni, who is sitting right next to me. He's a professor of economics and a one-time director of NISA, and has been a consultant to the UN on economic issues. Before my question, one brief anecdote I want to share with all of us here, to put in broad context as to what is happening to us in Yoruba land. I went to give a lecture at Lekki, Bejuleki, about a couple of years ago. And I didn't want to, I couldn't come back by expressway, so I took Ekpe, and then Ekpe Ijebode Ibadan. When I got to Ijebode, I had to start to ask for direction. I wasn't sure. So naturally, I was asking people I saw selling things, doing things by the roadside. And I believe I asked directions in about 4 or 5 places. And to my utter consternation, everywhere where I saw people, shoe sellers, clothes sellers, what have you, at Jebode, they were our brothers and sisters from Igbo land. I couldn't see. I remember Ijebus, one Ijebu Mojo la man wing back on. And this is also true of Ilesha, where I come from. Oshoma Alo, that's how they were ardent, and so the point, you know, that from Lagos all the way to Akure Ondo, the retail trading, which is a veritable source of employment. and which has ramifications in terms of supply, delivery, etc., has been ceded to others. So I would hope that somebody here, I've asked Professor Bankole to comment on it. Yeah, I've asked him about it before. I was so troubled about it because that is something that is to be taken away. And so I hope you have a chance to comment on it. My question for you, sir, is this. These ideas that you've shared with us today, which are laudable, one, our governments, are they aware about it? Are they not? Because these are basic, fundamental principles that everybody should know. And secondly, what do you think might be the limiting factor or obstacles to the implementation of this policy instrument they have put before us? As I said, you put in the nuts and bolts of it. What do you think are the limitations or potential obstacles to its implementation? Because I would think that by now, our government should know about this. Obafemi Awolowo used economists like Aluko, brain trusts, to make sure that there were policies which were then implemented. What is happening today? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to congratulate Professor Wale Oyemakinde for that very, very scholarly presentation. And I think you've done justice to the situation, and I want to go step by step. Pre-colonial Nigeria, there was no problem of unemployment. You went to the farm with your father, and when you became an adult, he gave you a hoe, he gave you a cutlass, you knew what to do. My brother here talked about the Oshomalu. The Oshomalu boy will be apprenticed to his parents, and he will take over from there. In other words, what has happened all along until we got ourselves to this situation is that we have gone through a process of development of underdevelopment. We have developed to a point of saturation, and that process has led us to underdevelopment. That's why I describe it as the development of underdevelopment. Now, unemployment as a phenomenon is economically wasteful, because the value of that person who is unemployed is less than zero. It is negative. So it is economically wasteful. Unemployment as an experience is also politically dangerous. Thirdly, unemployment is socially unjustifiable. You cannot justify it. And fourthly, Professor Oyemakinde, psychologically it is very dehumanizing and very depressing. Now, what is the way out? You have harped on agriculture and a lot of policy instruments and policy structures that can be put in place to harness the potentials in agriculture. Beautiful. But there are some constraints. Until a week ago, I had a sugarcane plantation. And I asked my boy to go and take a look at the farm. He came back and reported that somebody had gone there and cleared all the sugarcane. So I made inquiries. No human being had gone there to clear the sugarcane. They have been eaten up by cattle driven there by the Fulanis. So I have lost that farm. So if we are talking about agriculture, how does a farmer deal with that situation? But can we constrain the Fulani herdsman? The answer is perhaps we cannot. Because the Fulani herdsman has driven his animals into your farm, because up north where he's coming from, there is the problem of desertification. Serious desertification as a result of climate change. So, the problem that we have with the herdsman down south here today is because of their response to the climate change that has dried up the grassland in the north. So they have to move south where there is grass. Consequently, they destroy your farm, they destroy my farm. How does government manage that kind of situation? Even if we did not have the problem of the Fulanis, now, we cannot, very seriously speaking, depend on rain-fed agriculture. Suppose you have your farm, beautiful, and the rains fail to come. Do you take God to the court? Or do you arrest God? So even if you put your investment there, unless there's moisture, unless there's irrigation the way the Egyptians do it, we will have a problem. So you cannot, even if you, yes, the land is there, beautiful. Everybody wants to farm, fine. If the rains fail to come, what do you do? So the problem of climate change also has to be addressed, and there must be strategies to ensure that where moisture is required on the farm, you have water. So, I want to propose to the Dawn Commission a few things that you need to do. I was at the Institute for World Economics somewhere in Germany. And I knew that just like our final year students here in the universities undertake their final year projects, the German students also do the same thing. But when they go for this industrial attachment, the university expects you as a student to take away a problem from the industry where you did your internship. I hope everybody is following. A student goes for 3 months attachment in an industry. When he is leaving that industry, he takes with him or with her a particular problem that that industry has. And then he takes that problem as his final year project. So his lecturer in the university and his supervisor in the factory will collaborate with him and find solutions to that problem. And when he graduates, he then takes that result back to the industry to solve the problem. And already he has already opened a way to get a job for himself or herself. And I want to suggest that Dawn Commission must begin to think of a way of collaborating with the universities in the Southwest. So when students here go on industrial attachment, it must be made compulsory for them to take away a particular problem that they have identified during their 3 months or 4 months stay, that they can research into and take back to that industry to solve the problem of that industry. They will gather experience and they will also be able to open avenues for themselves. That is very, very important. I also want to suggest to the Dawn Commission, this country spends a lot of money in importing sugar, a lot of foreign exchange, particularly in importing glucose. And you know, most of our pharmaceutical companies depend a lot on the use of glucose to manufacture drugs, syrups, and so on for children. And they import this because Nigeria does not produce enough. Nigeria does not produce enough at all. But if you go to Oyo State, particularly Odoti local government, that savannah area there has a good piece of land for producing sweet potatoes. And sweet potatoes has a lot of glucose in it. Dawn can mobilize local farmers, students, unemployed graduates to cultivate potatoes. And it doesn't require a lot of moisture. And then all we need to do is small-scale factories to produce sugar, produce carbohydrates, produce glucose, and market to all these pharmaceutical industries in this country. Yes, so that we can generate foreign exchange for our local governments in Oyo State or in other states. Secondly, this country spends a lot of foreign exchange on importing starch. Our textiles factories require starch. The security forces require starch. Hospitals require starch. Textile industries and so on and so forth. Now, if we can produce starch at that level, this country will stop spending foreign exchange in importing starch, which you and I can produce on our farms. All we need to do is produce it on a large scale. There's a big market for it. Finally, sir, my experience has shown that the universities and polytechnics that supply the trained manpower does not communicate with the employers of labor. In other words, there is a communication gap between those who use the manpower that we produce and the institutions that produce the manpower. So the users of high-level manpower and the producers don't communicate at all. Yes, I have done some work for the National Universities Commission and the Nigerian Employers Consultative Association. There is no communication at all. That is why we go on duplicating courses. There's no curriculum re-engineering. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a fact. Yes, this country experiences serious graduate unemployment. But I want to tell you today, there's a high unsatisfied demand in the Nigerian economy for hydraulic engineers. I told my kids, if any of them was interested in studying hydraulic engineering, I would say, look, do not go beyond your first degree. Obtain your first degree in hydraulic engineering, sit down at home. Employers will come and beg you. There's a high demand that we cannot meet, and yet, about 160 universities in this country, we do not produce even one in 1 year. And yet, the demand is expanding. There's a demand in aviation. There is the demand for hydraulic engineers in marines. There's demand for hydraulic engineers, particularly with the increase in high-rise buildings that are going on. There is a demand in also plastic industries for hydraulic engineers, but we do not produce, this country does not produce one. Wherever you find a hydraulic engineer, he is either a foreigner or a Nigerian that has trained abroad. We do not produce them, and there's a high demand. So this calls for a need for curriculum re-engineering, particularly if we are going to be able to meet the demands for manpower and then solve our problems. Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning, sirs and mass, and good morning, my colleagues. I have 4 in one question. The first question is, to reduce the rate of unemployment in Nigeria, government and some non-governmental organizations have introduced some schemes like producing money and loans for people, specifically the youths. But nowadays, when you call the youth for interviews, the people you see there are adults and people that have jobs already. But these people go behind to bribe the people there just to get the money, then leaving behind the youth that need the money. What can be done about this sir. Then the second question is, with the large population of Nigeria, can unemployment be eradicated, especially with the trending issue about animals swallowing money in the country? How can that be possible? Can there be any case of unemployment in Nigeria? Then thirdly, we attend schools here to study different courses, to study. Then what government now tell us is to go back to the farm. How many politicians can send his children to the farm that have spent enough money on you, either you attend a state university or a private university? I've spent my money on you to study for your first and second degree, so the next thing for you is to go back to the farm. How can that be possible? But we can see that nowadays that's what the government are telling us, that there is no job opportunity outside except to go to the farm. Then lastly, how can this topic, zero tolerance for unemployment and the Yoruba nation, how can it be applied to the issue of unemployment in Nigeria? How can we use it? Thank you, sir.
The issue of unemployment is very critical. It's general and it is critical. But this type of seminar, this type of discussion should take place more often, so that in the discussion we'll find ways that will lead us to solutions. Now, the government and the people must be aware that it is a major problem. And when we say Greek is important, the land as a factor of production is important, we are not saying that everybody will be a farmer. People will slot into what they can slot into in the normal way. But the rest of them that cannot be absorbed should not be allowed to die, should not be allowed to waste away, should engage in something that will get them even to stimulate employment opportunities in other areas. You see, the point is that there is always a growth point. There is something that you do that will make other things possible. But if that thing is not done, other things that have been possible will not be possible. And that's why poverty reigns on. But it should not be allowed to continue. And issue of corruption is such that when there is corruption in the polity, there cannot be growth. Because when anything is good, it will be stolen. When anything is rising, it will be crippled. And then you have to settle the issue of corruption. And corruption is at different levels. But you see, the Nigerian situation is that it has become so chronic, and that we should address it at the different levels where we find corruption. And that is task of everybody. Now, the issue of the harassment, that's very much in the news, and government and the people should work harder to be sure that we solve the problem. After all, this country has existed for so long, and the problems that we are now facing have not been of this dimension. How can we not learn from the past so as to solve the current problems? If corruption has heightened our current problems, let corruption be disciplined. If we find that our attitude is the problem, then let's change our attitude. Then the government itself should be a listening government. And that means that we should be careful that we don't sell our votes. We vote for programs that we deliver. But if we sell our votes, then we cannot call the politicians to order. It's not just that we don't sell our votes. We should be sure that our votes count. And it starts with voters' registration. The voters' registration must not be compromised. The voters' registration must be done properly so that the voting itself will prosper. So that when it is proper, then it will reflect the wishes of the people, and people will vote for those who have convinced them that they know how to solve their problems. The issue of the family supporting the young people. In Yoruba land, you find that young men are more interested in Okada driving than in employment that is sustainable. That should not be. Because when every young man drives an Okada, then what's the future in that, apart from the danger that it brings to them? Then you find that we should be sure that we bring the rural areas and the urban areas together in our planning. If we settle the issue of rural poverty, then urban poverty will be settled. But if rural poverty remains, urban poverty will heighten. And it's when we have all these dimensions in place that we can be sure that our problems will be solved. But attitude is important, and if we know that Ishe ni ogun Ishe, then we must know that there is no alternative to that. Work must be available, and we must be sure that we do the work so that we generate the wealth that we spread. And we don't just allow a situation in which a few people who are close to the authorities are monopolizing all the opportunities, and the rest of the people are in poverty. And that poverty tends to be generational until it cripples the entire system.
Thanks very much, Don, for inviting me to these conversations. I'm a young man, and I like, and I thank you for bringing me back to this place, not as an Oba, but next to the House of Parliament there. If you remember, it was built by direct labor by the Minister of Public Works in the early 50s, by name Mr. Babarola from Ekiti. He was the Minister of Public Works Department. And two things, we're talking now about work, we're talking about unemployment. There was very little unemployment in those days, because as a Minister of Public Works, in Ekiti at least, he employed a group of people called Onishe Ojono. Onishe Ojono, these are workers along the road. And he got them, each person that he employed had a portion of road that he must look after. In the morning he will go there. If there are any holes it will be filled. In the morning, if there are any elevations, it will be leveled. So one day, you see the Onitsha Journal taking dust from the road and throwing it into the bush. The next day, you see him going to the bush and bringing dust to fill the gap in the road. So Ekiti roads were in pristine condition. So much so that when it came to that next building, which he built, the House of Assembly, we used to go there to listen to debates. And they said, Barala, you are from Ekiti. You haven't tried Ekiti roads. You go to Njebode, you're tiring their roads. He said Ekiti roads were naturally tired. Ekiti roads were naturally tired. And they took him on this, but he wasn't a man who could speak. He didn't have the gift of the gab of people like Azikiwe or Naho. He just said he had used public labor to level the roads. So this is what that was how he used labor then. Ekiti roads naturally, he tried to defend it, but he was right. He was right. You go to there now, you see people just sitting around, not doing anything. So you have to use appropriate labor for what is existing. So they vilified him. They said, no, you're not a proper Ekiti man. You are not a Minister of Public Works Department, but a Minister of Public Waste Department. And everybody laughed at this. Then these people, the farmers that he was using, were elderly people, and some of them were passing on. And he said, no, it's not even, it's people work and die. PWD was called people work and die because of that. So it went on and on like that. But the point we want to make is that we are people now. There must be respect for labor. There must be interest in labor. It doesn't matter what you are, whether you are a high professional or a low one. If you do not know the dignity of your labor, no matter what the government does, it may not be enough. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sirs. And I really appreciate the Commission for inviting me for this program. And I thank God for our Prof, our daddy, who has given some analysis as regards how Yoruba can have zero tolerance for unemployment. Actually, I want to start with this story. I was in Imeko in Ogun State, and a professor came there. That was about 3-4 years ago, and he said something about, I am involved in cotton production and textile. He made mention of how cotton started in their community, how the fathers used cotton money to send them to school, and he said he was coming back home to revive the lost heritage. And we did a lot of things. We spoke at length then in the palace of the Kabiesi. Everything ended there. Nothing happened again. Everything that the professor planned and promised to do, well, maybe when I see him, we'll be able to tell us why it has not gone beyond that level. What I just want to bring up here, sir, we're talking about zero tolerance to unemployment. Our daddy that has spoken after he spoke, sir, they have done the analysis of some problems that we face. The issue, the critical one that is ongoing now is the herdsmen issues. And I thank you for the advice you gave to making it at least well taken care of. But the question that has been bothering my heart is, what was the work our fathers in those days did to harmonize everything we needed, to ensuring that everything we had then was used for development. From history, that at that time there was nothing like unemployment, and now we have a lot of resources, but we are not doing it. Let me be specific about cotton. I speak about cotton anywhere. By the grace of God, I'm a chartered accountant, sir, and I worked in the north on cotton. I was privileged to be transferred to the southwest here. From history, I heard that the whole program of cotton commenced from southwest, from history. Because of some inventions of oil in the south, they shifted our focus that cotton cannot grow in the south any further. But through the other researches and coming back to history, we add that it started from here. Naturally, it grows here very well. And we have put in everything possible to ensuring that this is revived again as our heritage. Cotton, cocoa, palm oil. The best palm oil comes from the southwest. But if you buy palm oil now in southwest, it's the worst. The other commodities, naturally southwest has the ability to grow this thing naturally without even spending much, and we will get a lot of funds from it, and it will occupy our youth that are coming out from school. I wanted to say, I said I narrowed down to cotton as my specifics. If we make cotton to work properly, in a year, cotton production can engage thousands of individuals, families, with a multiplier effect. When it goes to processing of that cotton, at full capacity, we employ, for processing, we employ 700. For the minimum capacity of the ginnery I'm involved in running, we employ 700 casuals. On that, we employ about 50 graduates, 50 professionals who work in there. Then we run textiles. That is the ginnery. We run that is for a year, 6 months for one ginnery. We run textiles because after you finish from ginnery, you send your end product to textile for spinning and other activities in that value chain. For textile operations, we employ at full capacity, we employ 7,000 workers minimum. The Arewa textile that I am part of used to employ that. By virtue of my work, when I was working in AW & Co, Actuala Williams & Co, we used to audit UNTL. The staff strength of UNTL at the time I was in the audit was in the region of 15 to 20,000 at full capacity. Now, if we operate that in the southwest, who we have the natural ability to do, coupled with other commodities, the issue of unemployment will be beyond what we can talk about. We will not even be knowing anything about unemployment. We do that on cotton, on palm oil, on cocoa, because cocoa as a data is dead, even which is our heritage. What are we doing as government? Because thank God the Dawn Commission has their principles as the government, sir. This is what you said. What are we doing as government? What are we doing as industrialists, individuals? And what are we doing as people that wants things to work. I think there has to be a change of focus in this regard. I want to round up with this. Creativity is what is common in our society. That is, we know we have ideas, we have the knowledge of what to do, but the implementation has been the problem. How can we marry these two together so that we will not just be talking and talking and talking? Thank you, sirs.
Good afternoon, sir, ma. I want to appreciate Baba Wale Oyemakinde for the message, a very good message that has been on bit by bit. That now you are packaging for us. We are very much thank you. Now, the issue of what can disturb agricultural development in Western Nigeria. Baba mentioned the Fulanis, the climate. During the days of when there was no technology, they know when to plant. Immediately they do the same, or they see certain tree dropping their leaves. They know this year we should plant by this time. Now that we have technology, you must not think of any disturbances as regard agricultural productions. The issue of Fulanis. When the lion was killing the son of Talakawa, nobody talks. Now the lion has started killing the son of the rich person. They now say something is happening. There is a solution to it. The solution is, you, our leaders. Some of you ask cows more than 1,000. I know some people that ask cow 1,000 that put under the Fulani people. When this cow eats farmers' products, and the farmer is crying, the farmer will run back to his master. These are supposed to say, don't mind them. Let them go to the police. Let them go to the police. We find them there. What can you as our government do to help the less privileged from these oppressions of our people that are holding cow, that put it under the Fulani? That's one question. Number two, when we are talking of industrialization, we must talk of agriculture, because agriculture produces the primary raw material for industrialization. When we can tackle it, as Baba has said, we have tackled unemployment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to really thank Professor Oyemakinde, my Oga for many years at the University of Ibadan, for this lecture. In the same vein, I want to thank the Dawn Commission. I have been reading about the Dawn Commission sending things through the email. But I think I'm beginning to appreciate that this is a very serious body. Thank you very much for making this type of forum available. The points raised by Professor Oyemakinde are very profound. They are like a blueprint that we can use just to put in the flesh there, and there can be something that is done by this monster that is called unemployment. I just want to take time to highlight some issues that will be very useful. The one point raised by Prof was that universities should come in. Well, I want to say that the university, at least University of Ibadan, from where I come, and which is very central to southwestern Nigeria, we do not need to be invited. We do not need to actually be tutored as to what to do. Because if you take agriculture, for instance, the number of bachelor's long essays, master's dissertations, PhD theses, there is a whole department of agric extension, and by its name it is meant to go out into the field and to help farmers, to help people. All these theses and other things, they are sitting down there on our shelves. All that is needed is for an agency
like Don is trying to do, to mobilize. And that is where one would want to say, if we can go back to the old-fashioned town and gown interface, that town and gown should be meeting, it will be very useful. I can assure that a number of those implementation problems can actually be solved. We have the personnel, we have the resources to be able to do something about agriculture. The second thing I want to mention is that government as we have it today is disconnected with the people because of the type of democracy we practice. Our democracy is representative. It is not representational. We have representatives, but they don't represent the people. Ideas and the type of things done is pioneering are the things that needed to be represented. If we are able to actually mobilize our people, then the implementation problem might be solved. And I have a particular point to make in the case of countries in Latin America. Specifically, I want to mention Brazil. There is something they do. They call it participatory budgetary. Some call it participatory budgeting. Either way, what it involves is that government sheds some of its arrogance. We know it. Governments then go down to the people and ask them, what are your needs? How can you do it? So when it comes to the level of implementation, it is not government that gives those who monitor the implementation of projects. You have women who are not elected. You have people in a particular ward as in W-A-R-D, who will just mobilize themselves. When they do that, things which are blocked by bureaucratic constraints are bypassed. So implementation becomes very easy. So if we can take a little bit of making sure that we get our people, especially those who are called common people, into implementing government policies, the type of things we are trying to talk about can be done. Then finally, there is the issue of climate change that Prof mentioned. What happened in the past may not necessarily be things that can be implemented now because of the dynamics of time. But we can be innovative and imaginative in trying to make sure that we do not allow advanced technology to create unemployment. What do I mean? Now, the computer is a useful thing that has come. We may not be able to live our lives without computer. But in our own situation, say for instance, these states, the Yoruba people, the Yoruba nation, we can think and say that in our banks and other employers of labor, can we in the meantime do not give all our jobs out to computer? Say for instance in the banks, when we used to go to before the coming of computers to this stage, there were some manual logs where you get there, they will open those sheets to see what your name is. What I am trying to say is this: while we will continue to use our computers, can we try to say that we will not disable, we will not close the doors completely to people who ought to have been employed, so that if computers take all the jobs, there is no way you could be able to take those people, give them jobs immediately, so that we do have a sort of percentage. And that's going to be for our peculiar situation. Let computer take 60%. Let 40% of the jobs in banks and other areas where computers have rendered a good number of us jobless. Can we be imaginative, innovative, and try to keep some jobs encourage computer, because the way it is going, the robots are coming. Now, once they come again, because we always absorb anything coming from the West, like foam, you drop a foam into water, it absorbs it. When robots come here now, we are saying we have unemployment. In fact, all of us are going to be thrown out of job. So that if we can begin now to give some of the jobs that had been taken away by computer back to people, so that when we do that, we will at least try to help our situation. Once again, I thank the Dawn Commission and I thank Professor Oyemakinde.
Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon, sirs and ma'ams. First and foremost, I want to thank Dawn Commission for creating this very important avenue where we have the opportunity to rub minds together on how our nation, which is Yoruba nation, can move forward. Particularly, I want to thank our lecturer, the guest lecturer for today, my Baba Professor Oyemakinde, for a robust presentation. I want to, my own is not a question, and it's not a suggestion, it's not a observation. It's just an appeal to Dawn Commission. By the time I was coming in, I thought I will have a very full house where there will no more be any space for me to sit. But on getting here, I saw that maybe most of our invitees or guests did not turn up. But I want to implore Dawn that this program, Dawn should not see it as basically Dawn program alone. Dawn should try to carry along the states, the hosting states together, so that those who are supposed to be in attendance will be invited for this an important discussion, where we have more than 10-15 professors that can give us the way out of Nigerian problem. Actually, all what our people have contributed are some of the problems that we are facing. But, sir, I want to chip in more some of my own observation, which is the rapid growth in population. In the early 70s, when you, our Baba, our professors, you are about to finish your university education, there must have been already made job for you towards the last semester of your program, with Volkswagen cars, that this is car for you, this is what you want. But I thought, or I think by then, the population of our students or youth or graduates by then is not up to what the market labor is expecting or needed. That's why we were able to at least see that or believe that this kind of unemployment is not as rampant then as it is now. And then another one, the discussions of today centered on agriculture, how we can diversify our economy from mono economy, which is all about oil, to agriculture. Our prof talk about potato, cultivation of potato. My accountant talk of cotton and some, even sugar cane or whatsoever. It's all about agriculture that our youth, we should try to increase or improve. But we need to do more sensitization. My copper, one of our question was that how many of the politicians will he or she allow his children or his child to go on farming after he or she might have become a graduate? So we need to sensitize our people that the will is the unemployment of the youth that we are talking about, that the government should encourage, the government should do that. If at all you did, the government put in our effort to see that our people are encouraged to do the farming. But the will is not there. She said maybe for interview, for anything, that government sponsor program that youth should come to come in join the agricultural sector. It's all those people that are old enough or that are not youth that will be benefited from this program. That youth is because the will is not there. Youth themselves are not willing. I'm a part of them. I'm part of them. So the youth, the will for our people to join, to make us increase or put in more effort on agriculture, the sensitization should be increased. That a liter of honey is even more costly than a liter of petrol. We should try to encourage our people that they should involve more in agriculture. Well, like here in Oyo State, there are some programs that the government have been doing just to motivate our people, just to see that there is more employment for our people in the state. The issue of security, in the olden days, maybe before this administration in Oyo State came in, there are a lot of Oyo State was known as a garrison command of harm or of crime. But now the security will have encouraged the investors to come and maybe invest in the state. And this kind of thing is not all about defending the government or whatsoever, but little by little, at least with this present administration, about 32 companies are now in Oyo State investing. And it is part of this youth that our people, that these companies or investors are going to engage in their operations. Sir, I want to suggest that we, the professors, the academicians, we should not be left alone. We don't leave the politicians alone. Be with them. Give them summations. Give them papers, so that they can be in the right path. The issue of restructuring is coming up. The governors have thrown their weight behind the restructuring. I think the restructuring is going to cover the political area or aspect, the economic and education aspect of our society. In education aspect, we need to re-engineer our curriculum so that the graduates that Nigerian universities or tertiary institutions produce, they are not going to be ordinary youth or graduates, but graduates that are employable to the system. So I want to appreciate them for giving us the opportunity at least to contribute in this program. God bless you all, sir. In fact, the discussion has been so exciting. It's not strange that everybody is interested, because everybody is concerned. If we don't do something, then it means that we have given our self-condemnation. Because this country must survive. This country must not just survive, must flourish. The greatest concentration of the black people in the whole world. And we know that the rest of the world is not waiting for us. And that's why Dawn Commission should be congratulated on our efforts in sensitizing us. Again, they should keep the flag flying, so that at the end of the day, it will be a great story that we will have to tell. Thank you very much.
The distinguished lecturer of the day, I thank you so much for your analysis and the prescriptions contained therein. I am sure once we follow this very well, we'll be able to get out of our problems. But I also have a problem. And that problem has to do with what I will define as the dichotomy between the substructure and the superstructure. We identified the superstructure, but we have not identified the substructure that is creating the kind of superstructure we have now. And I am taking my cue from the young copper. The copper complained about what is going on in the country where you don't have jobs, where you have to bribe some people before you get jobs. And I cast my mind back to what I will call the failure of this society. This society has failed. And there are two critical institutions responsible for this failure. The first one is the family institution. The second one is the school. The school has failed us. When you look at the family, one of the first things my father cured me of was not wanting to recognize the dignity of labor. He will send us out to the front of the house to hoe and weed, but we are always shy because our friends and girls are passing, and they said, no, you must do it. So he cured us of that first one. The second one is, you must understand how to plant things, grow things. So we had farms, we had gardens, each one of us. Now, children no longer sweep when they wake in the morning. They watch television till 12 midnight. Cooks are in the house. They get to school, they no longer sweep their classrooms. And I find that very strange. It's cleaners who now sweep their classrooms. Every state is licensing schools without agric farms. What the hell are we talking about? And you expect these children to recognize what you call dignity of labor? No, we are just joking. We are joking. And so we must go back to creating the family institution, recreating the family institution. Let our children know how to sweep. Let them know how to cook. Let them know how to farm. And then the schools, what are we teaching them? A for apple. We don't grow apples here. And in a lecture I gave at Don a couple of years ago, I said, no, A is not for apple. A is for agbalumo. That's what we know. That's what they see. That is their reality. So until dawn, you and I, this society, this government, help to recreate the family institution, and we also go back to the drawing board to recreate the schools. We are joking. You are only looking at the superstructure, not the substructure. Thank you.
All protocol duly observed. On a more serious note, I have to congratulate Professor Oyemakinde for this beautiful lecture. If there has been a political forum, all will be filled to capacity. Now, this is a thought-provoking lecture, which, if at all we have a very serious people managing the affairs of this country or the state, they will send people down here, get us proper something of this nature, then they will set up a committee to implement all what was, because it is not easy for bringing off at least not less than 5 professors down here, coming here to come together, plus knowledgeable people around. So firstly, I have to congratulate you for doing so. Secondly, The commissioner who came here sometime and said that the professors will not help the government or this or that. No, it is the government, a very serious government, who tap the resources, because we are one of the resources. Professor Oyemakinde is one of the resources. He was the chairman of this and that and that. But it's not put in the rightful place where the knowledge could be tapped. Now, my YHC lady was talking about when they do the this agricultural something. At the end of it, they want to give out loan. They put another people. Somebody who has no knowledge. You know, I could remember I was going through this book. I saw the cited Lagos State. I know of a governor. 4 years is enough to serve this country if the ideology and the system is well, and they put the right people to man the affairs of it. It's enough. It's a question of implementation. You will just come and talk and talk and talk and they politicize everything. It is high time they do everything to stop all this political rascality and put a serious-minded people to man the affairs so that we get results. We are not seeing the results. There have been a lot of damages to the economy and agricultural advancement of this country than good. So if a brilliant effort is made to correct the situation, it is the politician that will tap the natural resources, because we have them. Even within this room, if they gather 2 or 3 of great knowledgeable people, what they want to implement will be made without problems, and things will work accordingly. That is my observation.
Good afternoon, everybody. We thank you for the privilege of giving us to be among, or to be here this afternoon. But I have one problem. My first question will just go for everybody. Why is that we Yorubas, we don't like helping each other? That is the first issue that and the first challenge that we youth nowadays we are facing in our society or in the community as large. Because sometimes in not part of the country, if you need their assistance, you don't need to speak any grammar. Immediately when you just speak to them in Hausa, they will understand what you are saying and they will attend to you. But Yorubas, Ekaros, I will say, what do you mean by that? Are you stupid? They won't help. Like yesterday now, I based in Barrack because my popsy is an army officer. There are 2 young men, they came to my house, said, Paul, please can you help us to look for your dad? They want him to sign for us. I say my dad is not working around this area again. He has been posted to Abuja. I moved to 2 of the corners, my neighbors. They are Yorubas. He said, what do you mean? I cannot sign for anybody. I said, well, at least I will start later. I said, okay, no problem. I went to Odogbo. I want to go and meet Hausa. I said, no problem, Paul, just come. Let them come in. At least they sign it for them. And again, we are talking about the issue of unemployment here. As Ibadan is concerned, most of all these investors, they are running because of association, one thing or the other. Assuming, like instance now, I have like 300,000, I want to go into the business. And they are telling me that I have to join one association of the other. And I'm going to register like 150,000. Am I going to stay? I will not stay. I will have to leave the place. I will go to another place. In North, immediately where you have an idea, there's many people around you, they are going to help you without joining any association or the other. Please, I want them to look into all this kind of something. That at least the rates of living and thuggery, they are going to disturb us again. And all this kind of something is not done, it's not good in Southwest. Please, I would want the Don to look into this and help us to, because of all this, at least can stop the unemployment in our society. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Adedotun Shengba. I'm from Dawn Commission. So, for some of us who are here for the first time, of course, we deem it fit to just say a little bit about Dawn Commission, and then Daddy Prof will take on those questions and comments that have been made. So Dawn Commission, of course, DAWN stands for Development Agenda for Western Nigeria. So the commission is actually set up to manage that agenda, which of course borders around regional integration, regional collaboration of states in Western Nigeria. Our intervention points are 5. So the first is economic competitiveness, economic development. We also intervene in infrastructure development. The third is social and human capital development. The fourth is governance, building inclusive institutions, governance and building inclusive institutions. And the fifth is around homeland affairs, homeland matters. Of course, the commission is currently headed by a Director General who is acting, Mr. Sheye Oyele. And we have a team working along those 5 pillars that we mentioned. You discover that our discussion today, which borders around unemployment, has thrown a lot of assignment and tasks on the Social and Human Capital Development Desk, which is headed by a senior analyst here who is seated. Her name is Olamide Odedino. One thing we would like us to know is that our intention for YHC, which is the Yoruba Historical Conversation, is to start the conversation. There are so many things we don't talk about in our region. There are so many things that would rather keep them bottled up in our stomach and not, So the idea of the Yoruba Historical Conversation is for us to provoke a platform where some of these issues can first be discussed. And in discussing them, also it's important for us to also get the historical perspective of all these conversations. Where are we coming from? And I'm very sure my colleague did justice to that. On this particular topic, which we are looking at, on our Social and Human Capital or Social and Human Development Desk, the education team is very key to us. In 2016, we held a roundtable on education, looking at what should be our areas of intervention. And then we came up and say, for us in Southwest, we pride to say universal education, everybody be educated, without really looking at the issue of quality and functionality of that education. And then we found out that an average household in Southwest, 90% of them are educated, but what they carry is not functional. It's not useful. And so, for us, we came up with some set of activities that needed to be done. As part of the way we work with the state government not to implement what the state government should naturally do, but we make. So we say in 4 M's, we make, we try to come up with programs, we try to come up with, for example, there's a program that we're looking to come up with, which is how do we build institutional framework for market-driven skills development. Of course, just to respond to what our professors have said here regarding what sort of response or what is doing along some of these lines. We have figured out that there is need for us to have institutional framework for us to actually have market-driven skills development. So if you say, nursing, and is not demanded by the market, then it's a waste of time. So for us, how do we begin to look at the Ministries of Education, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Ministry of Agri, how do we begin to get them to talk together to identify what skill is needed for that sector to move forward? And now then do we begin to get our educational institutions to then align themselves to provide that skill. So those are some of the things that we have been doing. So as part of how we work, we create programs to address these issues, and then we engage our states We leverage our convening power, which the government of Southwest have given to us. As we speak, we can call the commissioners of education, for example, commissioners of agriculture, for example, and bring them around an issue that we consider very important to sustainable development of the region. And then we engage them with this program. We do not just leave them at the point of engaging them and say we are backing off. We also submit ourselves as technical resources to also guide them. And so, of course, like Mr. Ashegu has pointed out, implementation is still a big issue. But what we have understood in the process of our work with the states is that when you are pointing somebody to an innovative approach to doing a particular thing which they are not used to, you yourself need to be very patient. You don't need to be too hasty, saying, oh, you have to do it now. This idea is fantastic. Why are they not rolling with it? So, as part of what we do at the Commission, we try to understand the context of implementing some of these programs. We try to understand the political, economic context. We try to understand the constraints, whether we like it or not. A governor, for example, will emerge by paying billions of naira. It's not likely going to listen to those people who don't give him that vote at no cost. So those are constraints also facing our government, which for us, we acknowledge. But we also ensure that in acknowledging this, we get them to a point where they are willing to implement some of these programs. And so in a nutshell, Dawn Commission is the new, it's a platform for every development conscious individual in Southwest. Our door is open. We're on the 10th floor at Cocoa House. Of course, just to symbolize what the Cocoa House also was. And we receive proposals. We welcome ideas. We welcome suggestions. What Prof has put here for us, these are prescriptions as to how we can. So for us is to then sit down, mobilize resources, technical capacities, and then see how we can flesh this out to become what we can take to our government. So there are long-term prescriptions here, there are short-term prescriptions, and we don't just leave it at conversation. We see what we do with this conversation. So we would like every one of us who are concerned, Mr. Shegun several times, and Alaji, they've been at the commission, cutting, you know, and all of that. So we welcome all of those ideas so long as they are geared towards reposition the Southwest economy. And our hope is that with all of these concerted efforts, with well-meaning individuals in the region, with eminent intellectuals in the region, professionals, those, of course, of the aged category, we believe that with all of this effort, we can all move this region forward. It may look like it's a snail movement. It may look like, oh, but we know that we are making appreciable progress, and we long to seek to get more of your support. So thank you very much. And just a bit of getting us to know what done is and how we do what we do. Thank you. And I have a question. Sorry, sir. I'm also a participant here. Yoruba. All right. So we've had here, I lead the economic competitiveness team. And part of what we work on is agri, solid minerals, and all of those. And of course, we have this very big topic before us, zero tolerance. Now, when we look at the kind of youth or the kind of demography that fall within this unemployment or having this unemployment status, it's not our daddies here. Majority of them are young adults and youth. Will agriculture really solve the problem? Knowing that the kind of agriculture we have, the kind of idea we have about agriculture now is that many people are employed. When you say many people are employed, what it means is that less of mechanization, Abi. Do you agree with me? When you say many people are employed, it means, but certainly mechanization reduces labor. Do we agree? Now, technology adoption. When you adopt technology, now we've seen so many greenhouses, greenhouse farming now. We've seen, in fact, we have some couple of guys who just leveraging what we call IoT, Internet of Things. You can run your fish farm without a single labor. All you need to do is set it up, put the IT infrastructure, and then it runs. So you don't need, unlike days when you need you don't need all of those, and those are job opportunities that are gone. So my question is, the kind of agriculture which is to position our commodities for global competitiveness. Our global competitiveness means that the price of those commodities are as low as what is coming from China. It's not like we're not producing some certain things, but where is the market? I spoke with somebody in Nikemtes textile industry. They are closing down their Ikorodu factory, which employs hundreds of people. And I asked him why. The Chinese textile companies have flooded the market with low product. So if you want to produce honey, like our commissioner said the other time, it must compete favorably with honey coming from, for example, Ghana. And if it must do so, it must be low cost. And if it must be low cost, technology appears to be the solution. If technology appears to be the solution, it looks like some of our youth, whom we think this same agriculture will employ, are not going to be employed. My question is, what solution, what innovative solution can we think of aside from this idea about agriculture, solid mineral? They engage a lot of people, which for me are ideas of decades ago and not the kind of agriculture that the country needs today. Thank you very much.
To that question, we have to agree that agriculture will be primary. Based on that primary, you then have coming out of agriculture secondary levels of sources of employment. Professor Oyemakinde mentioned a phrase, cottage industry. Now, in Brazil and some other Latin American countries where they had succeeded to some extent, there is a phrase they use, intermediate appropriate technology. In farming now, you don't want to continue to think that you want to be like a farmer in Texas. No, that's inappropriate. You are looking for things that will be applicable to our peculiar situation. So what they are doing in Latin America mostly is to work on intermediate appropriate technology. When you do that, the type of money that you're going to use on costing will be so low in the first case that when you factor that into the end product, you should be able to compete. If you are not going to get yourselves into what you can call in Yoruba phrase, aladanla, it will not be very low as we used to do it with our cutlasses and that. It will be intermediate, but it will not be like a farmer in Texas. One. Secondly, the governments have to come into this. There's no idea. That's why the point of liberalization, there's nothing called liberalization. That's why we know that what exists in reality is neo-liberalization. No, the Yoruba people will say, in other words, you cannot allow people to flood your country with goods. So there must be some protection. There must be a referee to protect people when they play football. The referee protects. So the government must be the agency that protects those infant industries. It is sad. When I used to go to Lagos, there was 5-star. All these textile industries, they had died. So government must be made to come to wake to its responsibility. There's no point trying to say we want to be in the good books of the West. There's something that is called the World Trade Organization. It has these policies, and they are not following the policies themselves. When there was banking problem in the US did not say we are the free people. Market is king market. No, they protected their automobile industry. So our government must be ready not to engage the West in any conflict, but to do things which are proper for us. Protect infant industry. You must protect. If we do that, then with the idea of intermediate appropriate technology, we should be able to compete. And then one thing in engaging people, I don't know why this type of forum in future, the Yoruba language is not part of it. For instance, what harm will it do if, as my Oga was delivering his lecture in English language, if it is translated into Yoruba? Because how are we going to engage the people who are in the field, our great-grandfather, our rural people, others who do not speak English language? So I think Dawn Commission, along the cultural line too, the cultural trajectory, let us promote Yoruba as well. And that's why I think I heard somebody in Lagos saying that maybe in the House of Assembly, Yoruba is going to be allowed. In this type of forum, Yoruba too. Because no matter how much English we understand, if we hear the Yoruba counterpart, it helps us further.
We try as much as possible to encourage the speaking of the language while the program is going on, but also we have transcripts translated into Yoruba for every edition of the conversation, which we hope will distribute this year. Mr. Diko Amo up there is our resource person when it comes to that. So we are working towards that. Máa gba ìbéèrè kan sí tí wọ́n ti ní ká máa sọ Yorùbá. Máa gba ìbéèrè kan sí lẹ́yìn ìbéèrè yìí máa jẹ́ kí àwọn bàbá wa kí wọ́n fún wa ní èsì.
All protocols duly observed. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Olanrewaju Ogunkola. First, I would also like to appreciate the Dawn Commission for this forum. Zero tolerance for unemployment. And I ask myself, unemployment for who? By who? Yorubas are fathers, and you are fathers. Say, tọmọdé bá ṣubú á wò wájú, tágbàlagbà bá ṣubú á wò ẹ̀yìn wò. Well, they are both directional. The child is more concerned about its future. The elderly person has already lived a life. Defining a problem situation, defining a solution, I think there are critical things we need to first identify. We first need to identify ourselves. Who are we? And then who do we want to be? It is in line of who we want to be that will drive any problem situations that we identify. Now, while I don't have any problem with a multicultural situation, like my brother was trying to say the other time, somebody there mentioned something about dual culturalization. You find out that a lot of problems that we are even identifying were not identified by us. Some of these problem situations are agendas sometimes, and in most cases, from foreign situations. I agree there's a situation of unemployment. But if I look into what my brother here, the representative from Dawn Commission, just briefly told us, if we really look at the situation, is the problem unemployment? If it is unemployment for who? A brother of mine used to say that what we are churning out of our universities and other educational institutions are unemployable graduates. How many graduates in Nigeria today, either from universities or from the School of Technologies, can even communicate? How many of them are even aware of their environment? For instance, in this room today, I saw a set of 6 people, and 4 of them were busy with their phones. Are we aware of our environment? Do we have a Yoruba space? Because here we said, and the Yoruba nation. Okay. Now, I think the first thing to look at is who are we? Or who do we want to be? Then we'll now begin to identify associative problems or situations along the line of who we are and who we want to be. If we don't do that, because amidst all the things that I've heard here today and the brief that my brother has just given us about Dawn Commission's activities, as far as I'm concerned, I can easily change the word unemployment with lack of production. Because if we produce, then we won't be talking about unemployment. But it is because we are not even producing. That is why we are talking about unemployment. But we are not producing, so we can't even feed ourselves, we can't house ourselves, we can't clothe ourselves. And we are not even educating ourselves. Today, we are discussing a Yoruba agenda and it is in English. Hello? I grew up in Lagos in the late 60s to early 70s. And even growing up at that time, I find it difficult to speak Yoruba. Because when I was growing up as a child, my Yoruba identity was taken away from me. Yoruba language was called vernacular, and I was meant to pay with my feeding money. And our fathers never saw anything wrong with that. We lost our identity. We don't even have a Yoruba identity, for crying out loud. In most Yoruba communities, we have people becoming Ezengbo, Obatakpa, Oba this, Oba that. And yet, in some other places, we are not like that. We are not treated like that. I know a Yoruba community here that the borehole in that community is being serviced by an Hausa person. Where is the space for the Yoruba? Who is the Yoruba? Where is the Yoruba? So I think we need to first identify ourselves and know where we're going. And then when we now decide where we're going, then we now begin to factor in some of these problems. And please, sir, in any development strategies, advocacies and strategies that we are bringing in, like my prof has just briefly mentioned, please let us use the language. A people, if you want to kill a people, take away their language. And I will give you one success story. The Nigerian music industry did not become of age and start making money until people like P-Square and Timaya and all the rest of them began to sing in their native self. Who is the Yoruba? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
So many issues have been raised, but one thing is important. Jobs that will create jobs. You see, for example, the GSM revolution, you know, the number of people involved in selling recharge cards all over the country. That one thing multiplied employment opportunities a lot, even to the remotest part of the country. And the fear that technology would remove people's jobs. No, it will multiply in the sense that people will be involved in all sorts of ancillaries that have been opened up because of the first line. There will be secondary line and other lines. It's just a probability. You find very many avenues that will be created just because of one pioneering effort. But you see, if the thing is restricted, then it goes nowhere. What we are saying is that there should be production, 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 and production. Nothing can be consumed if it has not been produced. And so, let production go on. And what are we saying about production? That is, let there be work for people to do. Let people be working. What they are working is they are producing. And what they are producing, some people will sell, some people will distribute, there will be drivers who will be required, there will be vendors, there will be stores that you will need to keep these things. So many other things will come, and that's the reason for getting the economy to be working. When the economy is working, other opportunities will multiply. So that you don't get a situation of scarcity. You are queuing for supplies. You don't queue for what is plenty. You queue because there is scarcity. And what we are now saying is that eliminate scarcity. Let there be opulence. And opulence will come when production is geared up. When production is domesticated and democratized, is everywhere. And that's what we are saying. To the work. We are all for the work. We must work, and that work that we do, it will have the spread effect. And that's why you say, apart from economic growth, there will be development, in the sense that it will reach here and there, and it will reflect. So when we are talking of poverty, the type of poverty that the child knows, the housewife knows, everybody knows, must be eliminated. Thank you.
We thank you very much. It's been, in my opinion, and a very informative session, educative session. And as we normally say at the commission, we don't leave these things at the realms of talk shop. We don't. A lot of things that we've written down here, listened to today, will be turned into policies that will send to our state governments. When you hear about states like Lagos adopting Yoruba as a compulsory language, or is being spoken at the State House of Assembly, it just didn't happen overnight. It's been a lot of work that went into that. And the Commission can safely say that as early as 4 years ago, like 2015, 2014, we were actively involved in pressurizing some of the states that our language must not die. So Lagos has set the ball rolling. I think there's another state in the southwest as well, Ogun, Osun, that allows, even at their plenary sessions in the houses of assembly, they speak Yoruba. Who speaks Latin today? Nobody. So if you think that, the language cannot die, it's a lie. If everybody keeps speaking, my mommy uses Benz, all this adulterated rubbish English, our language will eventually die. If you tune into radio stations in Lagos, if you go through 30 radio stations, you'll be hard pressed to find one speaking Yoruba. in Lagos. Pidgin, English. Some of them even pretend to be Americans. They speak with rings on their tongue. Very irritating. But I'm glad that we've identified the problem and we are addressing it. So, Baba, thank you once again, sir, for giving us your time. As I said, you are the first out of our speakers to have produced this for us, which we've circulated, and we highly appreciate this. For those of you who don't know, we don't give our speakers money. They give us their time and their goodwill. So don't think that Baba is being paid for this. He gave his time. And we appreciate that. That Agbanya Daleo, your wisdom will make use of it for many more years to come, sir. When Baba came, he came with some, I said earlier on that readers are leaders. Baba came with 2 books. One of the books published by him is Prosperity. It's only 1,000 naira. And the other one, Habat Macaulay, an Ibadan man in Lagos politics. I think his company published this. It's written by Bolaji Egbetokun. Again, it's 1,000 naira. Habat Macaulay, an Ibadan man in politics. I'm curious because I associated Habat Macaulay purely to Lagos. Now you learn every day. Every day. Please, the books are over there. Let's honor Baba. Let's pick one on our way out. It's 1,000 naira. Some of us spend it on recharge cards in a day. So it would be nice to do that. So on behalf of Dawn Commission, I want to say thank you. We are extremely grateful for giving us your time. You could have been elsewhere, but you gave us your time, you honored us. If we had come here and all the chairs are empty, it would have been a shame on our part. So we thank you from the depth of our hearts that you gave us your time, you honored us with your time to come here. And we look forward to seeing you at the next edition in April. May I call on Professor Famuyiwa to come and please do the presentation to Professor Oyemakinde. Thank you, Professor. So on behalf of Development Agenda for Western Nigeria Commission, thank you, Baba, for the lecture. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Photographs.
I'll call on Mr. Oladeji from Dawn Commission to come and give the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Wale Oladeji. I'd like to thank our speaker for today, Professor Wale Oyemakinde, for taking our time to be with us this afternoon, to share with us from his wealth of knowledge. But thank you so much. We've all benefited from your lecture today. You've challenged each and every one of us here. As a young man, you've actually told me that I need to work rather to be able to eat and live. It is my responsibility as a Yoruba man to do that. That is what Yoruba people are known for. So it's a challenge for me, it's a challenge for everyone here to work. We should not be the type that will complain that there's no job, so therefore I do not have anything to eat. We are not of that nature as Yoruba people. You've also helped us to see today that for us to even talk of restructuring at all, we have to start from our economy. We need to restructure our economy. That is the only way by which nobody will be afflicted or oppressed with the yoke of joblessness. Thank you so much, Baba. We really appreciate those reminders or those the points which you actually dished out from your lecture for today. And to our guests, we want to thank you so much for honoring our invitation. We thank you so much for your recommendations or suggestions, areas where you need us to work on, which you actually pointed to us. We appreciate them, and we can assure you that we work on those areas. We're looking forward to seeing you at the 9th edition of the Yoruba Historical Conversation. Once again, I'd like to thank you so much for honoring our invitation, for being part of this 8th edition of Yoruba Historical Conversation. Thank you so much, and I wish you all a safe journey back to your various destinations. Thank you, and enjoy your weekend.
ẹ jẹ́ kí ẹ gbọ́ ọ̀rọ̀ àgbà bí ó ṣe lówùúrọ̀.